Hello, welcome to the podcast Spinal Moves, a Canadian series about activity-based therapy, an intervention used to improve recovery for people living with spinal cord injury. I am your host, Anita Kaiser. In today's episode, I will be speaking with two guests to learn about how they started up an ABT center in their community. Our first guest is Heather Cairns-Mills. Heather is the founder and president of Walk It Off Spinal Cord Wellness Center, a not-for-profit ABT neurorecovery facility in Newmarket, Ontario. She is a paramedic by training with 14 years of experience. Heather is married to a man who sustained a spinal cord injury while on a family vacation. Welcome to the podcast, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here too. So Heather, you have such an interesting story about how you first discovered activity-based therapy. Do you mind sharing that with our audience?
Sure. You had mentioned that my husband had a spinal cord injury. And after coming home from the hospital from inpatient, we wanted more. The inpatient program was amazing. It helped Kevin with all the activities of daily living that he needed to live at home. But he, being a 28-year-old man, didn't want, as everybody, when they have a spinal cord injury, they don't accept what they have right away. So we were looking for more. And it was basically some just friends and family saying, have you heard about this place in California? So we finally discovered Project Walk. Then we found out there was a satellite independent Project Walk center in Florida. And that's when we decided to fundraise for it. And we fundraised enough that we could stay down there for about 6 weeks. We went into the facility and it was pretty much bare bones. And we said, what did we do? Oh no, spent all this money to come here. And as soon as they started working with Kevin and working with his entire body, we're sold. We want to stay another month right there. And then we knew we were going to continue with this process. So we made a couple trips down throughout 2009, 2010, and 2011. But it's expensive because you have to provide enough that you could live down there as well as the therapy itself. So that's how we first heard about it.
So obviously you went down there multiple times because your husband was seeing a difference.
Absolutely. It was night and day. He's a C4-5 quadriplegic, 5-6 now. He re-diagnosed. And when we went down there, he was in a manual chair, but could barely push himself on level ground. He had himself strapped into his chair. And after coming back after 6 weeks, we took all the straps off. He was able to hold himself in the chair without falling out. He could push himself in the chair, just so much more functionality. And we just wanted to keep going with it.
That's quite amazing to hear that kind of progress. I'm curious though, what made you take that leap from going down there, doing the therapy to all of a sudden saying, I want to open my own facility?
Yeah, well, after a couple years of fundraising, people kind of get tired they're exhausted. And so we didn't get as much money towards the end of that second year. And we also met so many other people in our area that were going down to the States to do this program. And we said, we should bring this back up to Canada. I had a medical background. I also had done kinesiology in university. So it's just something I said, I think we can do this. And we started off fundraising in 2010, and we were able to open our center in January of 2012. Within bare bones, just like we saw in Orlando when they first started out. I think we had a therapy table. We had a total gym, which is an exercise machine that you can do squats on, and mats and balls, and that's about it. But we had amazing staff that we had trained down in the States.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you had to think about when it came to setting up a facility up here?
Like anybody starting a business, I wrote out a business plan and made sure that it would financially work out. I chose an area that not only needed this type of therapy, but also was close to home for me. So we did open up near our home in Newmarket, Ontario. But then we were able to service people more in the northern part of the GTA, as well as out into the Kawarthas, out into Simcoe County. So it was a good place to open up. We also chose right off the highway so that people could get to us easier, right across the street from an accessible hotel. Back in January, we had somebody come from Saudi Arabia. We had somebody from Ireland come. We almost had somebody come from Egypt, but the pandemic struck. And I think that's thanks to our social media. I think a lot of people have been looking at our Instagram and how important social media is in developing the awareness for Walk It Off.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how did you attract people, not just from even out of province, but out of country? That's incredible.
I'll say that thanks to my staff that was really good at it, Instagram. I think that was our number one way that we brought in people from outside of the country. But inside, it was mostly word of mouth. Because our program wasn't traditional, it was hard to get recommendations and referrals from other healthcare professionals. So it was a very small population that came to Walk It Off. I think we started off with 3 people right from the beginning. And then word of mouth spread and it grew. And that's probably our largest way of bringing in clientele. Over the years, we've been open for almost 9 years now. But now we do have referrals from healthcare practitioners. Mm-hmm.
It kind of leads into my next question. I was going to ask about some of the challenges. Obviously, you just raised that whole issue of the buy-in by therapists because they're used to practicing traditional therapy. And like you said, this is a very unique form of therapy. So how do you get that buy-in?
Our kinesiologists, they're the ones that take on most of the ABT program. They're so enthusiastic about it. Some physiotherapists, because they're trained in a traditional way, it's very new to them. Well, at the beginning, we had trouble finding good physiotherapists to help us and buy into the program. But now we've seen a lot of excitement with ABT with other therapists.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that you had the foresight, even in terms of location, placing it so that it was near hotels for the out-of-towners. So just thinking about too, like, is there any other challenges that you didn't think of ahead of time that you've had to try and struggle and problem solve after the fact?
The biggest one was buying in from other healthcare practitioners. That was the number one. I didn't think it would be as difficult. Another one is we are a not-for-profit and finding funding to help us grow. So we are a fee-for-service clinic, but our fundraising goes into paying for our specialized pieces of equipment, whereas our fee-for-service goes to pay for the overhead. So in order to keep the costs down for our clients, we decided to go the not-for-profit way so that we could buy more specialized equipment. Though I want to say that the ABT program is something that you don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need to have all the expensive pieces of equipment. Yes, add them on afterwards. It can assist with the program, but really it's finding those perfect clinicians that are excited about the program. Other challenges that I've found were time. A lot of time when you're starting out a clinic, having young children at home, not for anybody, but also having somebody with a disability at home made it very challenging to try and start this program. Other challenges I would say is because of the cost of our program, we can't see as many people that would like to come and see us. It is fee for service, so in order to come, individuals may need to fundraise in order to come, like we had to do when we went down to Florida. But we're also covered by insurance companies, so private insurance companies for physiotherapy, motor vehicle accident insurance, as well as WSIB. So one of the challenges is with insurance companies is they always want to see a goal being achieved. And with somebody with an SCI, it can be years to achieve the goals that you need. And at some point in time, some insurance companies may start to cut you off from your therapies, as well as needing more therapy than other injuries. One of the problems our individuals have is they run out of their insurance coverage pretty much early on in the year, and then it's out of pocket for them after that. Another thing is when an able-bodied person goes to a gym to work out, they walk in, they jump on a piece of equipment, they're able to get what they need out of it, whereas somebody with a physical disability may need someone to help them. It can be anything from just handing them weights to completely moving their bodies. It's very important to maintain fitness for all individuals, especially the individuals with physical disabilities, because the healthier you are, the more you're out of the healthcare system.
Yeah, I know, I can see that. And I can appreciate the challenges with running the facility, and also for the clients themselves. Dealing with insurance companies, I'm sure, can be quite challenging, especially if there's that expectation of seeing improvements within a short period of time. And like you said, that's not necessarily the case for all individuals. Recovery takes time. It's unfortunate, and that's probably something that we need to put more emphasis is educating our insurance companies so that they recognize this type of therapy as being beneficial, but something that requires more time to see the benefits. So do you have any plans or goals for the future for your center? Things that you're looking to do in terms of expansion or pieces of equipment that you're looking to purchase?
Well, at this time, for the last few years, we've been fundraising to try and expand into a larger facility so that we can provide more help to more individuals, as well as we have kinesiologists and physiotherapists, and we'd like to bring other professions in, healthcare professions in. It can be very stressful for somebody getting in and out of a vehicle when you're in a wheelchair, to be going to a physiotherapist here and then a massage therapist here. And so if we could be more of a facility that can handle all your needs, that's one of our main goals right now. In the future, of course, always thought about franchising to more northern areas, because there's always a need. We had somebody coming from Timmins, somebody coming from Sault Ste. Marie for a while, and just to be able to expand at least the ABT program throughout the different areas throughout Canada, really.
One of the points that you raised that's really great is you said that to start out with a center, you really don't need a lot of equipment. You can really start with just a few simple pieces and really low-tech devices and equipment. And then as you're able to expand and grow, you can start adding in some of those other pieces of technology that can help and benefit. So that's a really wonderful and I think advantage to activity-based therapy. So my final question to you is, what would your advice be to anyone else who's considering opening their own activity-based therapy clinic?
And just trail off from what you just had said is keep it small. You don't need large pieces of equipment to start off with, and you can build upon that. One of the things that a lot of individuals come to and comment on is the atmosphere of Walk It Off. I always like to say that we are a clinic disguised as a gym. It's a place of health rather than a place of sickness. You come in, people are feeling hope, they're feeling energy. We've got music playing. It's an open atmosphere. A lot of our clientele are able to speak with each other. So there's a lot of peer support that's organically driven. We do have meetings where if individuals like to talk about certain topics, we do that as well. But I just think that organically grown peer support is so important for this group of individuals.
Well, thanks very much, Heather. It's been a pleasure to have you on here and share all of your knowledge and experience. Our second guest is Bean Gill. Bean worked as an X-ray technologist up until the time she became paralyzed by a virus in July 2012. She is now the co-founder and executive director of a growing nonprofit organization called RIU Paralysis Recovery Center in Edmonton, Alberta. Bean has been a strong advocate for the disability community, earning Global's Women of Vision Award, the Top 40 Under 40, and RBC's Women of Influence Award. She is also the reigning Miss Wheelchair Canada. Welcome to the podcast, Bean.
Thank you, Anita. It's great to be here, and thank you for that nice introduction.
So, Bean, you've lived with your spinal cord injury now for less than 10 years, which is around the time that ABT is started to become more well-known. So I'm curious, were you introduced to ABT at the time of your spinal cord injury when you're in rehab?
Yeah, that's when I was introduced to it. But I also kind of fell through the cracks of the medical system here, and I didn't get to rehab until 7 months after I was paralyzed.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was paralyzed in Vegas, I didn't go through the mainstream route that people would go. Plus, I had a non-traumatic spinal cord injury, so there was no surgery, there was no transfer of care within that regard. And so, like I said, I kind of fell through the cracks of the medical system. And yeah, I kind of fended for myself for the first 7 months. I, tried doing physio, navigated the system as best I could. And then it was when I got into the rehab hospital here, it was actually my physiotherapist who told me that I should look up Project Walk in California. And then after that, that's when I found out about activity-based training and fell in love.
So did you go down to Project Walk then and stay there for a bit and participate there?
Yeah. So while I was in the hospital here, my mom did a bunch of research and she found that there was an affiliate of Project Walk in Regina called First Steps Wellness Center. And so she arranged for me her and I to drive there after I was discharged. We went to Regina for a week first. So that was my first introduction to activity-based training. And I absolutely loved it. Like, the guys who were working with me were awesome. It was just, a really upbeat environment and hard work, right? And that's what I wanted. That's what I saw results. And I wanted to work with people who weren't scared of my spasticity. Most people are. And that was my first taste. And then I found out about Synaptic in Calgary. And so then we were driving down there every Friday. We'd work out for 2 hours and come back. And then, eventually in July of 2013, my mom and I went down to California for 3 weeks. And that's where my recovery just exponentially rose.
That's amazing. I can appreciate the challenge and difficulty with your whole story about having a non-traumatic injury and navigating the system like that. So it's great that you found it so beneficial for you, but what made you take that leap to go from participating in ABT to actually making that decision to start up your own center?
Okay, well, after being paralyzed, I didn't know what my future looked like, right? Like, I was an x-ray tech. I can't do this job in a wheelchair. I can't be an x-ray tech anymore. So what am I going to do? I'm also a makeup artist, but I mean, makeup artist is great and stuff, but you can't really make a big living out of that here in Edmonton anyways. And doing it seated was really, really hard. So I didn't know what I was going to do. So I poured my whole life into my recovery because I was like, this is what I need to do right now. And so I'm going to do it. And so, like I said, I navigated the first year kind of on my own. And then when I was in California, after the first week, it was astounding. I have so much spasticity that my ankles are usually pointed, right? My toes are pointed usually in plantar flexion. And by the end of the first week there, they had me standing on my flat feet, and no one had been able to do that with me here. And I was just blown away by the environment and just how the trainers are, everything about it. And so before I left there, I went and talked to the CEO, and I talked to him about franchise opportunities because at that time, Project Walks were popping up all over the world. And I actually left there with franchise papers and took everything with me. And so I kind of knew that that's what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really gung-ho about it. I was still more focused on my personal recovery, and my headspace wasn't in the right spot either. It's quite a whirlwind going through a spinal cord injury. And I was also going through a divorce at the same time as well. And so there was a lot of, mental health stuff that came up and not being in a place where I could run a business successfully. And so then I just kind of went with the flow. Like, I just continued to work out. I found Nancy when I was in California. Actually, that's how I found Nancy, who is now my business partner, but she was my trainer for years, and then I started seeing the need here where I would meet somebody in my journey and tell them about Nancy, and she'd go work out with them at their house. And soon she was going around from house to house to house, training people while going to school. And that's when we really started to see the need. And so it wasn't until 2016 when Nancy actually got a full-time job offer from an amazing facility in Florida. And I was like, no, you can't go. And she said, okay, well, if I'm going to stay here, then we have to do something worthwhile. And that was it. When we said that, the universe lined up all the doors, opened the right ones at the right time. And it was literally a year later that RIU was open.
That's great. So for our listeners who are interested or considering going down the same path that you have and opening up their own ABT center, what would you say are the top 5 things that you would need to do or have in place to make that happen?
Great question. Now, having RE has been open in April, it'll be 4 years. And so we are still new in the game, but I do have a few years of experience underneath me now. I think the first and foremost is you need a lead trainer. You need somebody who's going to be doing the training. You can have clients, you can have support, you can have donors, but until you have somebody who's going to carry out your program for you or who can create the program, you don't have a business. And so find a trainer first and foremost. 2, have them or you or collectively develop an evidence-based, activity-based training program. This is where, we'll talk about this later, the challenges come in too, right? 3, there has to be a big need in wherever area you are. And I mean, I think that's kind of everywhere because people with disabilities are literally everywhere. Wherever there's able-bodied people, there's going to be people with disabilities, right? So I don't really think having clients is an issue really anywhere, but your program has to be good and you have to be able to keep those clients and they have to be able to afford your program. There's a lot of other logistics involved in that, but there has to be a need. 4, marketing. You've got to get your name out there. You have to do what you can to let people know what you're doing. Because this is such a new field, especially here in Canada, you have to be loud. You have to do what you can and you don't have to pay for it. We got a lot of free media attention because we were the first facility of its kind in Edmonton. If you're the first of anything, media will just gobble it up. And then, the 5th, faith and hope. You got to believe in yourself. You got to have faith in yourself and you have to believe and hope that this will flourish into a successful business. And that can be unwavering. You cannot have doubt in yourself. And it's normal, right? We all kind of like, oh my God, what did I do? But you have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in your project and your program. If you don't, then nobody else will.
Yeah. And I can see along with faith and hope, you need a lot of perseverance.
Oh yeah.
To make it happen.
I think just as a human, you do.
Yeah. So you started to indicate that along with these top 5, there's obviously a number of challenges and hurdles that you kind of had to ride and deal with along the way. What were some of those biggest ones that you had to deal with? Yeah,
there's quite a few big challenges. I think one of the biggest ones is the stigma that neuro recovery isn't real. That is not just in Alberta, that is not just in Canada, that is worldwide, not in all countries, but in a lot of countries, especially in North America. Medical community thinks if you have central nervous system damage, sorry, what you got. But and we know that that's not true. You can recover. So that's been one of the biggest challenges for sure, because it's not just the medical system, it's the public as a whole, it's society as a whole. They all have these beliefs. A lot of the time they don't know where these beliefs come from, but they hold people back a lot. And that's even people with disabilities get held back by this stigma because they don't think they're going to get any better. We ended up getting a lot of pushback from the medical community. When we opened initially, we met with them before we opened to tell them this is what we're doing. We need you guys' support. We are the facility that you go to once you're discharged from the rehab hospital. There's nowhere else to go. You kind of just left on your own. And in the beginning, it was great. They supported us. But then things started happening where our clients were doing things here that they said that they would never be able to do. And here it's happening because here we don't see limitations. We only see potential. And so that created some friction between our organizations. I'm happy to say that friction is now dissipating because it has to, right? I mean, there's no room for ego in this business or in this disability world at all. And in fact, at our front door here, we have our rules of conduct, and on there it says, leave your ego at the door, because there's no room for it in here, right? We're here to help people. And I feel like every healthcare professional should have that same attitude, but they don't, that's reality. But yeah, medical pushback it is a hard thing to work through, but it is possible. Growing too fast, that's a big challenge too. So with us, we purposely kept our name quiet for the first little while. It's just simply because I've never run a business before, neither has Nancy. And, to be quite honest, we didn't know what we were doing. And, it's a nonprofit on top of that. So there's a whole other ball game of board of directors and all these things that you have to incorporate and have a nonprofit. And so it was a really steep learning curve. So we kept our name quiet on purpose. We did end up growing too fast than what we were ready for anyways, but at least it wasn't a huge explosion. Like what we've seen in the past, not just with activity-based training centers, but businesses in general, is if your growth explodes too fast and you can't handle it, you don't have the administrative support to handle it, you'll likely implode. And that's what we did not want to happen. We've seen things happen with other people's businesses and our families and friends, and we kind of want to learn from other people's mistakes to make sure that that doesn't happen with REU. So another challenge that we've had is breaking the barrier that kinesiology is a stepping stone and it's not a career. So we were just talking about this before we started recording, but in Alberta, kinesiology is not governed by a college, it's governed by an association. And based off that, most insurance companies don't consider it a viable modality. And because of that, neither do the healthcare system and the doctors and stuff, right? But I mean, all of our trainers are kinesiologists. Nancy went and got extra training from the States and from all these other places because none of this stuff is taught in university here anyways. So even if you are a PT or an OT, which a few of our staff members are in school for OT and PT, they're still not learning this in that school. To me, it doesn't matter how many letters you have behind your name because you're not learning this. We just want people to know that kinesiology can be a career. You can be making that money the same as PTs and OTs are making without a master's.
These challenges that you're mentioning are really not simple ones. Like in many ways, many of them are systemic. Yeah. And so the solutions are really not that easy. You know, we're talking about building a curriculum in our institutions that can help start teaching ABT. We're talking about behavior change in society and among our healthcare professionals to recognize ABT as a valid form of therapy. These are huge hurdles for you to climb, and give a lot of credit to you for the strides that you've made within your community to start to break down some of these challenges and barriers that you're dealing with.
Thank you. You know, to be quite honest, a lot of this happened because I just have no more patience. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm tired of living in a world that isn't designed for me. I'm tired of being in an environment that people don't plan for people with disabilities for. I'm done. I have no more patience. And so I've been given this voice. I've been given this platform. You better believe it. I'm going to use it to create change, and not just immediate change, long lasting change that will affect the generations behind us. Because people have been too quiet for too long and too complacent. I will not be.
You really need a strong advocate with a big voice to be able to create that change.
Yeah, well, it's not just like, we're not just fighting, right? Like, we have to keep evolving. Our world is changing, everything's changing, but why is the healthcare system remaining stagnant? Why is the universities remaining stagnant? Why? That doesn't make sense to me. These are the institutions that should be changing the most. It just makes sense to me that they should be evolving with time. You talked about changing curriculum, and that's exactly it. Our University of Alberta just changed their OT curriculum to include neurorecovery this year. So this is where the problems come in, because now you're producing 100 OTs, 100 PTs per year that have these beliefs, that have these limiting beliefs, that will not be able to treat people properly because they don't have the proper education, they don't have the proper knowledge, the gold standard, the up-to-date knowledge. A lot of this stuff needs to change, and it is changing, which is really good. And I'm not saying this to make anybody feel bad or to put anybody down or be condescending or anything. It's just, we need to bring light to it, right? We need to talk about this stuff. And these are the things that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
It's been steps forward, but really slow, small baby steps.
So we just need to give it a big nudge.
Big post. Yeah. So, you mentioned one of the other things was getting the word out. And you said you've been fortunate because you're one of the first there. So you got a lot of initial free advertising. But what are some of the other things that you do to try and promote your facility and get the word out in your community?
You don't need a lot of money to do marketing. And I know if you go the traditional route of marketing, yes, then you do need a lot of money. You need $20,000 to $50,000 a year budgeted for marketing. But in this time where you need to be innovative, you need to be creative, we have so much at our hands for free. Social media is free. And so use it. Like what we did, how we got our name and our tagline and stuff is I searched out all the marketing agencies in Edmonton. From there was an article of top 10, read that article. From there, I researched all the marketing agencies, found a couple of them that are purely run by women, contacted them, emailed them, told them, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to do. I can't get my business off the ground without a name. And so we don't have any money to put into this. Can you please help us? We met with them and they were like, yeah, we'll do this for free for you guys. So they gave us our name and our tagline. That got the ball rolling. And wherever I can, I give them a shout out. So it was Zag Creative here in Edmonton, a wonderful company. If you ask for some stuff for free, you will get it, or at least you'll get a discount. And so that was one of my tips for later on I was going to talk about, but always, always, always ask for a discount. Never pay full price for anything. And I'm East Indian, so it's in my blood to barter and to like ask for a deal. But like, even if you're not East Indian, if you're not in like, don't have that in you, just do it. And I know it's awkward, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And when you are doing a business like this, where you're trying to help people, you have a good story, you're trying to really make change and help people live better lives, people will get behind that. People will get behind you if they see how passionate you are. They just feel compelled to give. That's how we started with marketing. But word of mouth has been huge for us. When we started in April of 2017, by the end of the month, we had 6 clients. And it just has snowballed from there. And even now, people like clients will see somebody else in a grocery store using a wheelchair, and they'll go up to them and tell them about us. That has really helped a lot. And then honestly, any kind of media. Like, I feel like people have a kind of a weird relationship with media where they think that the media is a bit on a bit of a pedestal and they're hard to reach. Same with politicians. But to me, they're not. To me, they're people and they're looking for a story. And hey, I have a story for you. You want a feel good fluff piece? I got one for you. Right. And as soon as you start getting those clients coming in and they're seeing the benefit of it and stuff, I mean, that's just gold in marketing for you.
Who's the clientele that you're attracting? Like, are you getting a lot of individuals that are newly injured, or have you also been able to attract people that have been injured for a long time living in the community? Are you getting any individuals that are not spinal cord injury?
We get anybody and everybody. So our youngest, we just got an application for an 8-month-old baby with CP. That would be our youngest. Right now, other than that, our youngest is 14 months. And our oldest is in her 80s. It's a whole range of people. The majority of our clients are diagnosed with cerebral palsy or spinal cord injury. But we do have some clients with other neurologic conditions. We have quite a few who are undiagnosed. We have some who have a genetic condition. It's really kind of all over the place. We just say neuro recovery. So if you have a neurological condition, which is a wide umbrella of diagnoses, simply because the way our system is set up here, unless you have a diagnosis, you cannot access those programs or those services. And so there's so many people like me who fall through the cracks. We want to fill all the gaps that we can, that we see in all the systems. And so that's one of them. There are some contraindications to some degenerative conditions where activity-based training can expedite their symptoms. So of course, we don't want to do that. We don't want to hurt anybody more. But with something like that, like, doesn't mean that you still can't be my friend. Doesn't mean you still can't come to our grief recovery program or to our events or do our group boxing classes or do our yoga and meditation. And if we can't help you with activity-based training, we're going to try to help you with something else, or we'll try to point you in the right direction of somebody who can. So it's really a wide gamut of people that we see here.
So you just indicated something interesting. So it's not just one-on-one therapy that you're providing. You also provide other things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important. We want to be a wellness center. We want to be a one-stop shop. And to be that, you have to encompass everything. And I mean, I've always wanted to do an adapted boxing class because I found it very difficult to find an accessible boxing gym here in Edmonton that didn't have attitudinal barriers either. And so, we have 3 punching bags hanging in the back, and we did our first session earlier this year and it was awesome, but then COVID hit. And since then we haven't been able to do any group sessions. Same with yoga. Actually, we just started an online yoga class earlier this week and that's been a big hit. And yeah, with the grief recovery program, I mean, if you're a human on this planet, you're going to experience loss. Do many of us know how to deal with it? No. And so especially with something that's just traumatizing as a spinal cord injury or a brain injury or divorce, death, whatever, we find it really imperative to offer this program in conjunction with the Grief and Trauma Healing Center. So they provide the program, they're the experts in it. We just are a place for the clients to come to do it. because your mental health and your physical health are tied hand in hand. And so if we're going to work on your physical health, you bet your bottom dollar we're going to work on your mental health as well.
So I'm curious, do you have any future goals or plans for your center?
So many. I mean, when people ask me what my goal is, I always say to change the world. And we're going to do it. And so our goal with REU is in our 6 to 10 years, we plan to have our freestanding state-of-the-art facility. It'll be, again, like a one-stop shop where a bunch of these other organizations like Spinal Cord Injury Alberta, Cerebral Palsy Alberta, Brain Care Center will likely have space in our building. And so we can all be kind of together. We want to have an able-bodied gym in there as well. So whether it's CrossFit, strength and conditioning, or whatever it is, because we want to be truly inclusive, and you can't be inclusive if able-bodied people are not involved. We want to have aqua therapy. We're going to have a 50-meter track. It's just going to be state of the art. Everything you could possibly imagine, we're going to have it. And either attached to or close by, I would like to have a 40-unit accessible housing unit, simply because that's a huge issue in our city here to find accessible, affordable housing. I would likely sell half of them as condos and use the other half as Airbnb kind of things, because we have a lot of people that come from out of town to come to REU.
No, that's such a great idea. And I've heard that with other centers as well, where they've made sure location-wise they were near accessible hotels for those individuals that are coming from far away. They could come, stay for a week and do a really intensive workout and go back home and try and apply some of those learnings and teachings at home. So that's great. What would your advice be to others who are considering opening up their own ABT clinic?
First and foremost, do it. Go for it. Take the leap. Do it. It's going to be scary. You're going to cry. You're going to be overwhelmed. But you're also going to laugh, and you're going to have so much fulfillment from it. Just do it. But some actual tips on how to do it: do your research. Be stingy with your money, and don't just willy-nilly give it to anybody. That's always ask for a discount or for free. Reach out to other clinics, other activity-based training centers, and become their ally. I don't consider anybody competition. Even if another center opened here in Edmonton, I wouldn't consider them competition, because there's so many people that need help. So if you want to do it, do it. Reach out to other centers for help, because people are very open to helping. Was it Heather from Walk It Off in Ontario? She has helped me so much before we opened, and I've never met her in real life. Just nice to see, you've been doing this for a while. What did you learn? How did you do this? And I'm very open to that too. So if you want to ask, go ahead. You have to believe in yourself and your project. I would definitely say find a business partner whose weaknesses are your strengths, and vice versa. Nancy and I are complete opposites. She's very much an introvert. I'm very much an extrovert. I do all the media. I do all the networking. I do all the talking. She has created an activity-based training course. She's working on a CP course right now. She's created our staff training manual and all of that stuff. Whereas that's not my passion. That's not my strength, but it's hers. And so we balance each other very well. We respect each other very well, and we communicate. I think that's really important. Is you have to respect your business partner, and you have to be able to, both of you have to be able to speak your truths without fighting. And I think as adults, we can do that. You just have to train yourself to not take everything personally. My last bit of advice is just be yourself, be loud, and be proud. And you have to be easygoing. You have to be able to go with the flow, because things change so much, especially in this field of neurorecovery, where technology is changing by the second, and which means studies are changing, which means, gold standard is no longer gold standard anymore within minutes. And so definitely have some R&D, be completely open-minded. Don't let anybody put you in a box, tear up all the boxes around you, and just believe in yourself.
Yeah, those are great words of wisdom and words to live by, really. Thank you so much, Bean, for coming on the show, speaking with us, sharing your experiences and knowledge. It's been, I think, really helpful. I've learned a lot myself, and hopefully our listeners have as well. Thanks for listening. Our final episode will be hosted by Hope Jervis-Rademeyer and Anita Kaiser, where they will share highlights and commentary on the previous 7 episodes and final thoughts. So please tune in. And speaking of tuning in, you can link to Spinal Moves and get more information about ABT and the Canadian Community of Practice at praxisinstitute.org. Or you can also listen to Spinal Moves on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other popular platforms. This series is sponsored by Praxis Spinal Cord Institute, a Canadian-based not-for-profit that leads global collaboration in spinal cord injury research, innovation, and care. Special thanks to the Saskatchewan Centre for Patient Outreach. Spinal Moves was created by Hope Jervis-Rademeyer, produced by Hope Jervis-Rademeyer, Praxis Spinal Cord Institute, and Anita Kaiser. The information provided on Spinal Moves is of a general nature and cannot substitute for the advice of a medical or healthcare professional. The opinions expressed on the show are solely that of the host and individual contributors. None of the individual contributors, system operators, developers, sponsors of Spinal Moves, nor anyone else connected to Spinal Moves can take any responsibility for the results or consequences of any attempt to use or adopt any of the information presented through this podcast.